Alright, in this video I want to talk about something that you saw in the previous video of mine where I put Wi-Fi in a box. Now what I want to talk about is one of these right here. This is the AirCube ISP. Now this one here takes a good bit of power. It takes at least 5 watts to run this AirCube. As you can see, this is the specs from the booklet itself. It says maximum 5 watts. If it's under a heavy load, it's going to pull that 5 watts. Now, to be able to use a CPE power supply to feed the CPE that comes with it, and be able to feed one of these, basically you have to have 12 watts. You have to have 12 watts. It don't have to necessarily be gigabit, which this one is, but this is 12 watts. You have to have one of these to be able to feed the CPE and the cube, AirCube. Now, not all CPEs come with a PoE that has enough power to be able to do that. And what will happen is you plug it in, both of them will light up, both of them will come online, but when you start using the cube as an access point and start streaming, they will start rebooting. The cube itself will start rebooting, which will automatically turn the CPE off because it feeds the CPE through the cube itself. Now, I have gotten some CPEs and checked the power supply and see exactly what wattage they come with and how much consumption of power they actually use. Is there enough left over after it powers the CPE to feed the cube itself? So let me show you some and the specs of it. Here is one that's very popular to use. It comes with a 24 volt 0.3 amps of a power PoE. Now it's consuming itself 7 watts. Now, to figure out how many watts that the PoE can actually put out is you take 24 volts and you multiply that by 0.3. The power supply, the PoE, in this case, puts out 7.2 watts. So it's just enough to be able to feed the radio, the CPE, alone. So you cannot take this CPE with its PoE and be able to feed the cube, because you need 5 watts extra left over to be able to feed both of them. So you cannot use this one to do that. Let's go to another one. This one here. This one only takes 4 watts to run, but the PoE is not as powerful. As you can see, it's 24 at 0.2. So 0.2 multiplied by 24 is only 4.8 watts. So you cannot use the power supply that comes with this one and feed the cube and the CPE at the same time. Let's go to another one. This one here, you see that it consumes 5.5 watts maximum power consumption. Now this one comes with a 0.5 amp at 24 volts. So you take the 24, multiply by 0.5. That is 12 watts, that power supply that comes with it. Now, since you have 12 watts from the PoE and you're only using 5.5 maximum for the CPE, So if you got 12 watts that that comes in the PoE, and you're only going to use 5.5, means you got 6.5 left over, which is more than enough to feed the cube, which only requires maximum of 5. So this CPE, which is a, let's see, this one here is a Loco M2. This one comes with enough power to feed itself and the cube. Let's get to another one. This one here, which is a NS-5AC power supply at 12 watts, 0.5. This one uses 8.5 watts. So if you have 12 and you're taking away the 8.5, you have 3.5 watts left over, which is not enough to feed the cube. Let's go to another one. Let's move up in size. This one here comes with the same power supply, 24 volts, 0.5 amps, and this is gigabit PoE. But it don't matter if it's gigabit or not, it's the power that it can actually supply. So again, you have 12 watts to play with, and you're going to consume maximum of 7.5 from the CPE itself. And that leaves you 4.5 watts left over. Now, this you probably can get by with because the maximum power consumption on this radio is 7.5. So the maximum it's going to do is 7.5. Unless you got it cranked up wide open and just non-stop going, it's not going to get up to the 7.5 watts. So this one, I would say you could probably try it and see if it works. Because this radio, unless you, like I said, unless you got it maxed out, it's not going to reach to 7.5. And you'll have enough to be able to feed the cube on this one power supply that comes with this CPE. Let's go to another one. This one here. And this is a PBE-AC-Gen 2. This one also comes with the same power supply, gigabit at 0.5. And this radio consumes maximum of 8.5. As you saw the one before, only 7.5. So this one takes 8.5. I don't feel safe to be able to use this power supply to be able to feed the cube and this CPE at the same time. You can try it. Depends on if you really running this CPE really hard or not. If it's on a very low consumption of bandwidth and not using very high speed and all, you might get by with it. It's one of them things that you would have to actually set it up and see. And if it don't work, all you have to do is change the power supply. You don't have to go change the radio. You just get a bigger wattage PoE and you'll be fine. You cannot just go out there and get a CPE and set up one of these necessarily every time, because the consumption of power that this takes and the consumption that the CPE takes, according to the PoE that comes with the CPE, may not be enough to feed both. So you can't just go out there and get a CPE and plug it in one of these and say, okay, I'm just going to use the CPE and take the power supply to feed this and the CPE, and the client will have this as their router. That is not necessarily always the scenario that you'd be able to do that. You have to look at the specs and be sure that the PoE has enough wattage to feed the CPE and the air cube. Not all of them will have it. Hopefully this helps. It's a good setup so far. I've got three set up in. Oh, let's see where we at. I got 3 of them set up in a box. Got another box here. I got 2 or 3 more. I try to figure out a way, because I started running into some RVs that's not a permanent setup. They're not going to leave it there for a year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever. They're going to pull in for maybe the summer and stay there for 2 or 3 months, and then they're going to leave. And I was trying to figure out a way to save me some trips. Of the way I was setting them up was through coax cable, and use Mocha on the outside box, which converts the CPE Ethernet into coax, and then coax goes into the RV, which has a screw in on the side of most of the RVs. Then put a Mocha on the inside, converts it back to Ethernet, plug in the router, they got internet. Now, the downfall on that is, if somebody's not going to be there for a long period of time, is when they leave, they call. I have to take time to go over there, get the equipment out of the RV. Now, this way, and the power supply, the hookup for the RV is right next to the RV itself. Where they plug in their RV is right next to it. It's like 3 or 4 feet away from the RV. So putting this box on the same pole, putting this box on the exact same pole of their power supply for the RV itself is very in proximity of the RV, so the Wi-Fi signal will have no issue of actually getting into the RV, and they will have internet. The advantage of doing it this way is, if they want to leave, well, they just call and say, hey, we no longer need the service. Well, I can remotely, sitting here in my RV, or sitting across the country or the world, and be able to deactivate the CPE. And also, you can set these up so it will show up in the UNMS, in the software itself, and be able to see the cube and the CPE in the WISP software. And another advantage is, not only you get to see this in the WISP software, you can change the password for the Wi-Fi remotely. That's right, you can change the Wi-Fi remotely. So when John Doe leaves, he calls, says, we no longer need a service. You deactivate his account. You can change the password. Somebody else calls and says, hey, we need service and we're in blah, 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 John Doe's RV park, lot number 8, whatever it may be. You log in, you set up their account, you change the password, you tell them the password, they're ready to go. And you don't have to go there. You can do it remotely. unless something happens with the equipment, you don't have to go back. You can do it all remotely. And one thing I like about Ubiquiti equipment, it just pretty much, you set it up, it goes and just keeps going. And it has a lot of room in these boxes for the equipment, because the only thing that goes in the box, as you saw in my previous video, is the cube and the PoE. And as you see, this sits right nicely down in the corner, and I always turn it where the jacks here are pointing this way, so I have access to it, just like that. All the plugs are here, so I can actually access to it. And what I do is take a little double-sided stick tape, put a little piece there, you know, about maybe 2 inches long, and just stick it right there, and it just kind of holds it in place. It won't fall out if you don't, but unless it's tilting or whatever. But I just like put it in there, kind of snugs it in there. And then I take the power supply, the PoE, and set it up in this area. And I put a little piece of tape and let it hold there. Then all I got to do is drill 2 little holes right here. One for the power supply to come in. So since it's on their power pole, I put like a 3-foot little drop cord and put an end on it. And be sure you stick the wire through it before you put the end on it, because if you put the end on it before you stick it through, you got to take the end back off. Believe me, I've done that. Because the other ones I didn't have to do that. I can pre-made the cords because it had little slits in them that I can just slide a cord in. This scenario, I have to actually stick the cord through, then put the end on the cord. So one hole is for the power cord, and one for the Ethernet wire come out and go to the CPE. Another advantage of doing it this way, I don't have to feed the PoE and the MoCA. So I have to put a cord in there, put an end on it, and then put a 2-way or 3-way to feed 2 things. Power cord goes in, it feeds the PoE. So much less equipment, costs less. Not only it costs less to set up, costs less that you don't have to spend time to go get the equipment, go set up somebody, go back, put the equipment in the next RV, set it up, gas, labor, all that. You do it, you pretty much go set this up and leave it. Then the rest of it is remotely done, unless, like I said, something happens to the equipment for whatever reason. I've had it where the GFI, which the outside plugs are GFI at the RVs, and sometimes they will trip and it will shut the whole internet off. I go out there and see that it's tripped, and then let the owner know that it's tripping for whatever reason, which it should not, because the equipment's not getting in the water or anything like that, making it shouldn't be tripping. I've had a few of them that they actually had to change the GFI because it was just bad. But they've been staying there for like 2 or 3 years, and they never used that plug before for any reason. And now it got used and found that it was, you know, faulty. But that is how you set up Wi-Fi in a box. Now this comes in handy for RV parks, campgrounds, place where they set up tents temporary, or if you have like a gazebo somewhere of some sort, or a picnic area in a park that you want to give Wi-Fi, you can set that up in there and they have Wi-Fi. And it does have a place where you can actually put a lock if you like. So it lock the box, and the box is very sealed. I would say probably before you drill holes in it, as much as this rubber seal here is on this thing, I mean, it's packed in there hard. As you can see, at first I thought the hinges were bad because it wouldn't close. I thought something was wrong, but it's not. It's the rubber seal, this rubber seal here, already hitting. Can't see it in there, but if you listen to it, actually it's sticking. It's so new. Listen. That's the rubber seal there. It's actually sticky because I just opened it up. It's still sticky, but you can hear it actually hitting. Listen. And that's what that's hitting. It's spongy. So it seals very well. I would say if you take the box just like it is and submerge it in water, water probably would not get in there because there's no holes I know of anywhere on here. I would say you could probably submerge this in water and it wouldn't even get water in it as it is now. Nice little box. Nice way to put Wi-Fi somewhere that you can control it remotely. Different scenarios that you can use for this kind of setup. But I had to figure out a way to do that because I saw that going back to RVs that are not permanently set up for a long period of time, it's going to be just like a pull in, pull out. I do believe is the term they use. They come in for 2 or 3 months and then leave and somebody else comes in. I said it's got to be a way to save trips, save time, save money, to be able to have to keep going back and getting equipment. Because I had, twice that the people packed up, they didn't call. The owner told me that they were moving, but they didn't say when. And the owner thought he got all the equipment from inside of the RV, and he didn't. So then we had to get them to ship the rest of the equipment back to us that is supposed to have been left, that was part of the internet setup. So when that happened, I said, got to be able to prevent that somehow. So I started looking at the equipment and trying to figure out a way to be able to do it. I ordered the equipment and I got 2 or 3 of them set up now and they're working fine. I got another one I'm going to set up and see how it goes. I looked at the specs of the cube and see what's the maximum temperature that they can actually work in. I think it was like over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't see any issue of overheating. I've had one of the routers in a box set up the same way, the TP-Link, and it said it was supposed to be like 108, 109 degrees, and it sat there for a whole summer. I mean, it was blistering hot that summer, and it was sitting in direct sunlight. Never had any issues. So I don't think I'll have any issues with these either. But time will tell if it works or not. But that's it for this video here. I figured I'd make this video to explain how you can go about setting up Wi-Fi in a box. Just in case somebody saw the video and said, hey man, that's a good idea. I'd like to be able to do that. But there's things you need to know, things you need to look for before you just go buy a CPE, plug it in, and say, hey, it keeps rebooting. Why? That's why I made this video. You understand it's got to have enough power, enough wattage to feed the CPE and the cube. Not all PoEs for the CPEs come with enough power left over to feed the cube as well. If you got a CPE that only has 0.3 watts or 0.3 amps and it's not enough watts, like if the radio pulls 7 and it's got a 7.2 watts, that's not enough. You will have to go and purchase another PoE from Ubiquiti to be able to power both of them. It's just a matter of math. You got the CPE wattage, you got the 5 watts of the cube, you got to have a CPE, a PoE that will give them two enough power. So you find out what the maximum on the CPE, maximum on the cube is 5, add them together, get a PoE that will give you that power or more. So that's how you would be able to do that kind of setup. Because if you don't have enough, it may light up. You might get online, but when it gets under stress, believe me, the cube will start recycling. It's just the way it works. It gets maxed out and just don't have enough power, it'll reboot. Hopefully this helped somebody, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.